Hello. William Morris, the inspiration behind the arts and crafts movement, was born into a wealthy family living in Walthamstow. He later described Walthamstow as a suburban village on the edge of Epping Forest, and once a pretty enough place, but now terribly cockneyfied and choked up by the jerry builder. He studied for the priesthood at Exeter College, where he met Edward Burne-Jones, and the two became lifelong friends. They were both captivated by the pre-Raphaelite artists, and Dante Gabriel Rossetti persuaded Burne-Jones to give up his studies for art. Morris graduated, but disappointed by the lack of religious passion he encountered, began work in G.E. Street's architectural practice, where he made another lifelong friend and collaborator, Philip Webb. And when Morris married Jane Burden in 1859, he commissioned Webb to design a house. The result embodied the idea of what later became known as the Arts and Crafts House. Although there's no such thing in terms of a shared design, the Arts and Crafts House is defined instead by common principles. Honest, well-built, comfortable homes with decorative touches, rooted in the landscape through the use of local materials, and taking a lead from local building traditions and character, the local vernacular. Brick, stone and tile were looked at not simply as building blocks, but as art objects in their own right. And as with Pugin in part 4 of this series, the symmetry of classicism is abandoned in favour of practical considerations and functionality. Houses planned from the inside out to best meet the needs of everyday life. And the house that Philip Webb designed for William and Jane Morris was the Red House in Bexleyheath, now in the care of the National Trust. Built in red brick and red tile, with a nod to the traditional oast houses of Kent. Philip Webb didn't design many houses. He chose his commissions with care, refusing to compromise his architectural principles. Those he did design all show great attention to detail. Arguably, the finest example of his work is Standen, near East Grinstead in East Sussex, and also now looked after by the National Trust. Standen was built for a solicitor, James Beale, and his large family between 1892 and 1894, on a high ridge with views over Ashdown Forest. When Beale acquired the site, there was an existing building, 15th century Hollybush Farm, which, typical of Webb, he retained, along with a barn, and incorporated them into his design, copying some of the features for Standen House itself. Sandstone was quarried on site, and the area where it had been taken from was then landscaped to create a sunken garden. Along with the stone, local bricks in contrasting shades of red were used, below oak weatherboard gables, with tile-hung areas and render to meet concerns about the exposed position. The square water tower has a belvedere to make the most of the view, and it's balanced by massive chimney stacks. Among other leading architects applying arts and crafts principles, Leicester-born Ernest Gimson. This is Stonewell Cottage in Ulverscroft, near Leicester, built in 1897 and now part of the National Trust portfolio. It was a difficult sloping site with outcrops of rock, which Gimson made use of for natural foundations, and the building zigzags down the contours, anchored by a substantial chimney. The rough stonework utilises natural boulders and recycled dry stone walling, very carefully selected and positioned to fit together, producing a house of rough-hewn character that blends into its setting, gives the impression that it evolved organically. Whitwood Manor, another National Trust property, was designed for Wolverhampton paint manufacturer Theodore Manor by architect Edward Ould in 1887. Manor was a well-informed client, familiar with the writings and the philosophy of William Morris, and Ould's design is an update of the timber-framed houses that were a feature of rural Staffordshire from medieval times, a vernacular revival in harmony with its countryside setting. And high-quality craftsmanship is on display in details such as the skillfully carved barge boards. An 1890s red brick and terracotta arts and crafts oasis in Derby was designed by Alexander Macpherson. The largest houses have stone string courses, stuccoed gables and decorative pargeting. The more modest terraces have a simpler string course, plain stucco and tile-hung gables with moulded stone lintels, labels above the entries and contrasting brick detail. Charles Voysey designed some grand houses based on arts and crafts principles. This is Broadleeds at Bowness, beside Lake Windermere, now the headquarters of the Boat Club. The Pastures at North Luffenham in Rutland was built in 1901. It's a typical Voysey design, a concentrated horizontal form with wide protective eaves and a sheltered welcoming entrance. He also applied arts and crafts principles to workers' cottages, including at Whitwood Terrace, Castleford in West Yorkshire, built in 1904 for colliery employees with the Miners' Institute, which is now the Rising Sun public house. And Voysey's ideas influenced the later house builders of Metroland and the interwar suburbs. Arts and crafts ideals were also applied to churches, and that will be my topic next time. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.